I'm going to give a few notes to Lissa. Hi, Lissa. This is Jana, and I am here with Victoria Dioh, and we are going to just get right into it because you guys already have her intro. So I'm going to count down and then welcome her to the show, and she's going to share her story of hope. So 3, 2, 1. Victoria, I'm so excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much, coming all the way from London.
That's right. Thank you so much, Jana. I really appreciate it.
I am really excited to have you share your story of hope with all of us today, if you don't mind doing that.
Sure. Once again, I just want to say thanks for inviting me onto the show. It's such an honor. Story of hope. Goodness. So I used to work in the corporate world a long time ago. And as every woman in the corporate world, the more you climb the ladder, the more you find that you come against different obstacles. And in my story, as much as I had a very quick rise into the corporate world, I realized something was missing. I was earning all the money I wanted. I was traveling everywhere. And there was just something that was missing that I couldn't figure out. It turned out years later that I was actually missing being connected to my intuition. And I didn't know that that's what that was. I pretty much stopped communicating as well as I could do. I wasn't creating in the same energy that I would love to. And after going through about 4 years of pretty much having a very stagnant life, I created a space where people would come up and say to me, the reason why you're not literally connecting to your higher self is because you're not connected to your intuition and you're not doing what you were put on this earth for. It took a long time for me to figure out what that was. But once I started to learn how to connect to my intuition, it gave me a freedom that I'm now living now. And that's how I now help people. And I'd love to go in more detail with it with you, but that's pretty much the summary of it.
By the way, I am a firm believer that we are all given this beautiful intuition for a reason.
Yes.
And one of the things I talk about is when I got sick,
yes,
I had intuitively known something wasn't right, but I ignored it.
Completely.
Yep. And then my body gave me little symptoms, right?
Yes.
So I ignored it. I'm too busy, right? I'm too busy with life to take care of myself.
That's it. Too busy. We make that excuse. We're too busy. We're too busy focusing on something else. And it comes in and sabotages us over and over again. And we sabotage ourselves. And it's so sad. You know, one of the things, I'm a Christian, and one of the things that I kept on saying when I was going through this whole journey, when I prayed, I said, I know I'm going through this because you need me to teach something to somebody one day. I just wish you'd tell me what it was. But I found that in the corporate world, I lost my feminine energy. I was busy proving myself. So I would step more into my masculine and I would be this forceful person in the corporate world. And I didn't need to be. I found that I felt as if I wasn't good enough, because if you're connected to your intuition, though, you would go more with a flow. So you wouldn't be feeling as if you weren't good enough. And then I was also finding that I was feeling very isolated. I was feeling quite stressed without even knowing how stressed I actually was. And I was having all these different symptoms that just didn't make sense, that weren't congruent with Victoria. And when I gradually started to step out, what actually happened, I'll go into a bit more detail. I went to a Tony Robbins event. And I don't know if your listeners have heard of Tony Robbins. He's huge, right? Especially in the States. I went to a Tony Robbins event and I knew that it would be life-changing. I just didn't know how much. And most people, when they go to these events, they say, oh my God, I got there and my life changed and it was amazing. And when I went, I had a really rude awakening, because it was almost as if I'd started to scratch just on the surface of actually what was going on. And the more I started to explore and understand myself, I started to realized that people were coming into my life who were telling me things around healing and connecting to your intuition that I'd never really understood before. I'd never really looked into what it meant about actually discovering what intuition actually looked like. And at the time I had a cooking company as well, and I'd never really twigged that I actually cooked intuitively. I would dream about recipes and create them, but I just took it all for granted. And then when I stopped working in the corporate world, all the contracts just stopped. I used to be a contractor, and one day the phones just stopped calling. And for the first year, I enjoyed myself. I traveled around the world, I had money. And then by year 2, I was like, hang on, nobody's called me for a year. Nobody's called me to offer a contract. What's going on? And then I started to get worried. But then I thought, oh, did I make a mistake in my last contract? Have I been discredited from my job? And I hadn't. But it was almost as if I'd disappeared off the face of this earth. And I always relate this story to the film It's a Wonderful Life, where they take the guy out of his life and they show him what his life would be if he didn't exist. It was almost like I'd stopped existing. And now I know that I was taken out of my life so that I would pay attention to the lessons that I had to learn to connect to my intuition, so that I could eventually help women in the corporate world who needed to connect to their intuition and heal them through food, words, and touch, so that they can be empowered and connect to their higher selves.
Wow. I would love to know, do you want to share maybe a couple of tips on how you teach women to connect to their intuitive side? One of the things I do when I'm talking about intuitiveness is I mention the fact that as moms, if you have children, right, you're so into it. Your kid can walk in, you know who's lying,
Yes.
you know
Yes.
what they were up to, you know when they're not feeling well. You just look at them, you're like, oh, something's not right. Are you okay?
Yes.
We have this huge intuitiveness that we're drawn into with our children.
Completely.
The thing is, we have that even more stronger for ourselves, but we oh, that can't be right. No, that's not going to happen. No, that we're just not listening to it. But Victoria, the minute I literally, because I known I was an intuitive since well, by the way, we all are, but I knew I had this beautiful gift from when I was 16. And when
Right.
I lean into those intuitive
Yes.
moves, feelings, draws, not only is it the most easiest thing I've ever done, it has literally, I can look back now and realize that those were the most joyous times of my life.
Completely. I love that you've used the example of mums and their children, because I actually did a post about 2 days ago talking exactly about the same thing. As mums, we connect with our intuition with our children. We know when they're up to something, you know, we know when they're being naughty and everything else. But when it comes to us women, into our intuition or into our benefit, something that's for us, we completely get rid of it. So one of the things that I do around intuition is I normally get people to just take their shoes off, and then I get them to just sit down and close their eyes. And when they close their eyes, I tell them to sort of like just imagine that they're in just a wide space. And in that wide space, literally nothing matters anymore. And they're connected to the sun. And I let the sun just stream into their eyes and just connect. And when they close their eyes and they get this quieting feeling, I ask them to think of one thing that they would love. And it's one thing for them and nobody else. And normally what tends to happen is when people actually connect to their intuition, what normally comes up is the first thing that comes up. And it's normally either something that they've put to the back of their mind, or the one thing that they'll go, oh, I like that. But, oh, no. What about the kids? What about my husband? But it's the first thing that you come up with, that first thing that you would love to connect. And it's a really easy one to think of because there's no magic involved. It's just literally just you connecting and listening to your heart, listening to what you would love, and your brain cells will bring that to the forefront because it knows what you would love already, because somewhere deep down inside you've already told yourself that, but you won't allow yourself to receive.
I love that. You know, I feel like, again, we're all born with intuitiveness, but as we get older and we have our journey, we get all those blocks that we've gotten, we become separate from it. It's, even though it's there, we don't recognize it anymore. And
Right.
I have a lot of people who are in personal relationships that'll come and start talking about something's going on, I don't feel right, but they're saying all the right words.
Yes.
I tell them, like, you already know your intuitiveness is right on, like whatever that is, and it's up to you to take charge of what you want to do and how you want to receive that. So what are some of the things that women can do? And I know men are listening to the show too, but mostly
Yes.
it's women.
Hi, Ben.
What are some of the things that women can do, like to realize that they've literally have this beautiful gift and they've been blocking it out?
Trust yourself. Believe in yourself. One of the things that I talk about, because I heal with food, I use food analogies all the time. So you need almost like if you're baking bread, you need your basic ingredients. You need to believe. You need to believe that you do have the power to be intuitive, to be able to connect to your higher self. You have the power to take ownership of your life. If you feel something, you sense something, then it's there, because everything is about energy. You and I have never met, but when we connect on the screen, we smile at each other. We're not just being polite. There's a slight affinity there and stuff. That's energy. We're miles away, hours and hours apart from each other, and yet there is an energy there. And it's the same with you and your listeners. You've not met every single one of your listeners, but they listen to you and they love listening to you. There's a reason. It's the energy. It's the same as women. You have to believe that it's possible. With intuition as well, you need to accept that you are honorable of receiving, because with intuition it's all about receiving this energy, these messages, and if you don't believe that you're worthy of receiving, those messages get blocked, because the truth of the matter is energy goes through the path of least resistance. So if energy is going to flow through and you've got all these blockages here, then the energy is going to try and go somewhere else. And the truth of the matter is you want it to flow all the way through you. So you need to open up and surrender. It's one of the things that I know I had to do. I had to surrender to the unknown. And it's scary. It is scary when you think of intuition, if you don't understand what intuition is, what it actually means. But like you said, it's that knowing that your child is going to be due on a particular date. Is that knowing that your child isn't well? Is that knowing that even when the doctor says, no, your child's fine, you go, no, check this and check that. Or you know that when your kids are quiet, you know they're not up to anything good. It's that knowing. Is that knowing that when you meet someone for the first time, you know you're going to be friends with them for the rest of your life. That connection is wonderful. But like you said as well, we only use it for our children, and when we're suspicious of our loved ones, of our boyfriends or husbands. Why can't we use it when we're in our workplace? Why can't we use it to get to understand exactly what our clients would love? Why can't we use it to see what our bosses would love, or how our teams would function? So, for example, I study alchemy, and alchemy allows you to be able to connect with people that you've never met. So I can, for example, before I go for an interview with a client, I normally connect with them so I understand what their needs are. So that when I'm speaking to them, I'm speaking their language. So the connection flows a lot more. That's intuition. We shouldn't just use it for the people in our smaller elements of life. And that's what causes women in businesses, the corporate world, or women just who have jobs. It causes them a lot of pain, because when it comes to working, deep down inside, can't speak, I do apologize. Deep down inside, we believe that it's a man's world. deep down inside, we believe that somebody else deserves to have that job than we do. And what we do is we literally just give up, and we give up and we let go of our intuition, and then we become programmed into literally a minuscule element of what we actually are. We lose our queendom. We're all queens and kings. That's why I've got purple as my logo color, because I believe that purple is all about royalty. And I want people to believe that we are queens and kings of our own destiny, and we need to take ownership of it. Otherwise, especially what's going on these days in this world, we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves in other people's agendas. We just need to connect to our intuition and just be that powerful human being that we actually are.
By the way, when we don't connect to our intuition and we let those blocks come in and put us in that normal, what we think is a normal streamline,
Yeah.
we are being held back from hitting our beautiful potential. We are held back from reaching all those goals and dreams that we may have had as children, as adults. And I want to talk a little bit about what those mind blocks look like and how we got them. Most of our mind blocks we got from overhearing conversations, things that have been told to us as children.
Yes.
And I talk about all the time about these little cookies I used to get. I would go to the fair and my mom would order me this cookie. And I remember I had to hold it with 2 hands. It was warm. It was the biggest cookie in the world. And I was like maybe 5. I went back to the fair as an adult. I could not wait to get a hold of that cookie. I dreamed about it. And when they gave it to me, I was like, what is this? It was small. It was like it came out of a package. But as a little kid, that cookie was the biggest thing in the world. And I had someone tell me I had a money block. And I'm like, no, I'm a mindset coach. I recognize money blocks in people. I do not have one. And the more I worked on it, I heard as a small child, somebody wanting to go to college who was a female, and her being told, oh, your husband will leave you if you become more educated. They'll feel insecure. If you're making more money, it throws off the balance of your house. You cannot do that. Be careful. And I held back when I realized I held back when I went into that world, because I didn't want to intimidate. I didn't want to look unattractive or unworthy for being in there. And then I realized, who cares?
Exactly.
Who cares?
Exactly. And I use the example of, we're born with an innocence. When we're born, there are the few seconds that we're born with an innocence. As soon as someone picks us up, we lose that innocence. Why? Because whoever picks us up, whether it's the nurse or the mom or the dad or the doctor, you straight away absorb their energy. And then you start to absorb their programming. And then you go to the mom, who definitely has her programming and her conditioning, and the dad, and then you meet the rest of the family. So by the time you go to nursery, you have already started to create your own limiting beliefs.
100%, that is so true.
Right. So then and nobody's taught you about intuition. You're a child, but you're being programmed without even realizing it. Then you go to nursery school and you meet friends, and these friends have been programmed by their families, and your teacher has been programmed by their family. And it's literally this massive web of conditioning and programming. So by the time you get to a point where or you start to think what's what, and you try to understand yourself, you're a mess. And you have to start unpicking things. And if you're fortunate to have a great teacher, you get to deal with it sooner. But then even that teacher has their beliefs. So it's a continuous piece of work. But if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, by the time this happens, it's affected your work life, your relationships with your kids, your husband, other friends. It's a whole web. And this is why connecting to your intuition as soon as possible and or reconnecting, as I call it, is really important, because then it gives you some sort of perspective as to what you have been programmed. Then you can choose what you want to put into your baskets and what you don't.
I think that is beautiful. And I love that you bring in the outside of our family, right? It's not what our
Yeah.
parents necessarily say or our immediate family. But I worked with a girl who could not speak her truth. She couldn't speak her voice. And we narrowed it down to when she started kindergarten, she had to
Mm.
raise her hand to be called upon before she could voice anything. And if
Yeah.
she spoke out, it was like, hey, it's not your turn. You and I get this, like we were all speaking, right? It would be a chaos in a classroom. But
Sure.
she was always told, you have a time to speak. This isn't it. Raise your hand. If I call on you, great. If not, hold it.
Yeah.
And so she never could release her voice until she realized that was me as a child. And I now am an adult and I have charge. I know intuitively when I should say something or I maybe should wait to say something. And so that was a big breakthrough from her. And I never even realized until I worked with her that it was outside sources. And we all have to raise our hand in
Yeah.
class to
Yeah.
speak and hold it in until then.
Yeah, even on Zoom, there's a hand raising thing where if there's several of you, you have to raise your hand. But I think it depending on what your conditioning is, because if you think about this girl, she wouldn't have been the only person in the class, but it depends what that meant to her, because it's all about meaning. I had a girl in one of my sessions, I call it Manifest Your Bliss, and one of the first questions I ask is, you're here because you want to manifest something. What's the one thing you want to manifest? And I remember she opened her mouth and nothing came out. And she literally went, and it was on a Zoom call and everybody's staring, and she goes, and nothing came out. And when we did some more intuitive work with her, which I love doing. So I do all my workshops on Zoom, and I really do a lot of interactive work with people. We figured out that she actually didn't believe she deserved anything. So every time she opened her mouth, nothing would come out, because she literally couldn't imagine, she couldn't visualize anything coming towards her. Within 4 days of working with her, she received a call that her paintings that had been put up in one of the bars that was closed because it was the first lockdown, all 3 had been sold. As soon as she started to believe, as soon as she started to open up and express herself and speak out what she wanted, all 3 paintings of hers got sold. She'd never sold anything before.
I love it. We can all have that abundant life. I want to
Yes.
talk to you about Manifestation Kitchen. And what is that? Because you keep saying throughout this interview that you
Yes.
use food, touch. What was the other one?
Words and touch.
Words
Yes.
and touch to
Yes.
help people start manifesting and becoming intuitive, or not
Yes.
becoming because they already are, but to tap
Yes.
into their intuitiveness.
Yes. That's right.
What does that mean? Because I never want to think about food in that way for me, but I want to know more about it.
So I used to own a company called Vic's Kitchen. And when I created Vic's Kitchen, it was because somebody had tasted my food and said, Vic, you need to sell this. It was literally a cooking sauce. And it was a tomato cooking sauce, but I also originate from Africa, where we eat a lot of hot pepper sauces. So I made a couple of bottles and I started selling them. I did a couple of products. And then I created a bigger and bigger range. And like I said earlier on in the show, I started to, I would dream up recipes and I would cook them. But I never really connected that to intuition, because I really had never been in a space where I was talking about intuition. Gradually, as my spiritual journey unfolded, I received a vision probably towards the end of last year. And the voice literally said, what if Vic's Kitchen doesn't exist anymore? And I was like, wow, where did that come from? That's a big deal. This is my baby. And shortly afterwards, I started having conversations about closing Vic's Kitchen down. No idea what I was going to do. And in between all of that, I'd also been flown to Africa and had been made an African oracle. And I came back not knowing what any of this meant. And I was like, I have all these gifts. I've experienced so much where I was almost homeless. I'd literally, emptied my bank account, didn't know if I was ever going to be able to earn money again. And I'd had all these amazing miracles happen to me. And I knew I had to get the message out, but I didn't know how. So I started to just put it out there that I wanted to create something like an umbrella with all my gifts. I just wanted an umbrella with all my gifts. And Manifestation Kitchen was created. And the more I sort of like connected to Manifestation Kitchen and who she would be serving, it was more around connecting women and just reconnecting them with their intuition and giving them that clarity and confidence and certainty to just manifest whatever they want. And it could be that they connect to the food that they're eating. So a lot of the time, there's a lot of food, one, when we go and eat, it's really, we need to be really careful to know who prepared that food. Because if there's a kitchen, no matter how posh the restaurant is, if there's a kitchen that just has such bad energy and there's a lot of arguments going on, it translates through the energy of the food. So when I talk about Manifestation Kitchen, I also want people to connect more to food that will ground them. So for example, did you know that purple foods connects you more to your third eye? And also things like purple sweet potatoes and orange sweet potatoes as well help you feel grounded. With beans and pulses, food from the ground. In the morning, if you drink ginger, it just reconnects you to yourself. People don't realize that, and we take food and we try and over process it, but actually the more natural the food is, the more it heals and the more it keeps you calm and grounded. But a lot of people don't realize that. So Manifestation Kitchen is saying anything is possible. You can create whatever you want, but guess what? There's also other things, there's also other tools that you can actually help with this process, and food is one of them, as well as having touch or distant healing. So a lot of people carry a lot of the stress on their shoulders, around their neck. And a lot of people will come to me and go, Vic, I need you to, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just need you to touch me somewhere. And I can literally connect to wherever of their body needs the help, and it will actually alleviate that pain. And whether that's through distance healing or not. So all of that helps you get rid of the blocks, allowing you to receive that energy that will reconnect you to your intuition.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Where can people connect with you? So people are listening to the show and they, by the way, again, you all have intuitiveness in you.
Yes.
It's just been blocked out to where you're not hearing it, but we all have that voice and that very powerful feeling inside of us. Where can
Yes.
people find you, where they can connect and learn how to use that and tapped into that more?
The best place to find me is on Instagram. And the reason why Instagram is the best place, if you go onto Instagram and type in Manifestation Kitchen, you will find me. You'll see this purple background and stuff. You'll know what it says. And if you follow me, then you'll see my face on a lot of the posts. But also on my bio, you can connect to my website. You can WhatsApp me. You can see my YouTube channel. You can go in there and see everything. So Instagram is the first instance port of call to go in and just explore and see what's there. And I also answer questions as well. I'm very interactive on there.
By the way, first of all, I love that. I love when I have an expert come on and talk about something and people can actually connect with them. Yes. And they're there for you. So I love that you show up for the people who are reaching out to you. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's important. It's important. I know what it's like when I see someone I want to learn from. I always ask questions. Yesterday I was speaking to somebody and she was like, I don't answer questions. I was like, I appreciate that, but I'll do anything to get a response. And I manifested a response from her and it was so cool. So yeah, manifestation works in different ways.
Love it. Thank you so much for being on the show today. We're going to have all of her information in the show notes. So if you want to connect with Victoria, you can just grab on any of those links and go follow her and get to know more and ask her some questions.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Jana. I really had such a wonderful time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Victoria.